So about 3-4 years ago, this book by Gerard Welling and Steve Giddings, The Lasker Method to Improving Chess, a manual for modern day club players. This book was written with the idea in mind of club players because the two authors say, look, club players spend too much time studying openings, they learn nuances in the opening that are important for grandmasters. Instead, Lasker didn't study too much the opening, but studied more the endgame, the middle game, and the relative phases of these two great topics in chess. This manual that has just 237 pages, I think, is made by 11 chapters. In these 11 chapters, you find in reality the first 9 chapters have something like 73 games or fragments of games to illustrate some important points, and then chapter 10 and 11 are mainly some positions. Here I will start to illustrate chapter 4 on the attack, okay, with the games that are included in chapter 4. So the two authors in chapter 4, they quote Lasker in his book Common Sense, where he says if you have a large superiority of force in a quarter where the enemy has important weaknesses like the king or the queen in a bad position, etc., you must assail quickly. Every one of your moves must be intended to do much. Your reserve force must be made useful for the attack with as much gain of time as possible, by attacking, for instance, some weaknesses while on the way, and the reserve force of the opponent must be kept back if possible. Now, this language, in my opinion, it was great probably for 1900. Today, I don't know what is really saying. He's probably trying to say that you must attack with every move and eventually sacrifice some pieces to gain time, and then of course you must stop the enemy force from becoming active. So if the king is in the center, you keep the king in the center. In any case, here there is, in the following example, we see him demonstrate this process to perfection. White makes a serious mistake in the early middle game, after which he is never given a moment's respite. So this is game 11, it's a Rui Lopez. White was Moritz Porgis and black was Emanuel Lasker. It was played in Nuremberg 1896. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, castle, knight takes e4, d4, bishop e7, queen e2, knight d6, bishop takes c6, b takes c6, and then we have d takes e5 and knight b7. At this point, white plays b3. And here the authors say white develops his pieces but does nothing to hinder black from freeing his position with the advance d7, d5. More problems are posed by knight c3. So they say knight c3 was better because after he would have been able, after castling, to play knight d4. Okay, I don't know how much a club player or a beginner would understand from this kind of comment. I mean, what are the problems here? What are the problems? I don't know. The king escaped the center. What are the special problems? Obviously, maybe there are problems because, of course, this is behind the curtain. It's all blocked, and this is more centralized. But how many beginners are able to actually make this kind of temporary advantage in development something that actually makes one win the game, right? So that's the problem here, in my opinion. Especially if you try to play it against a computer, you will discover that the computer also, if you have two centralized pieces, doesn't really care. So after b3, black played castle, bishop b2, and d5. At this point, white plays a move that is called en passant. He takes d6. And here the authors write, having placed his bishop on the long diagonal, white naturally wishes to open it up. Yeah, on this, obviously, it wants to open it up. But this move also frees black's pieces. Yeah, now they are kind of free. The position is still only equal, but black has certainly solved his opening problems, and it soon becomes clear that it is white who has to be a little careful. C takes d6, knight b d2, rook e8, rook f e1, and bishop d7. Okay. And now white makes a mistake. Try to pause the video and eventually find out for yourself what do you think white should have played. The move played in the game is knight e4 and is considered a mistake. The correct move to play was rook a d1, which seems to maintain the balance. Here the authors give the following line: bishop f8, and notice that bishop f6 trying to attack this and this at the same time doesn't really work. Why? Because white plays immediately this, right? So that's the problem. If you try to play this, white continues here. So now it's up to black. Black obviously doesn't want to lose the rook, so the other takes back, and we see that the position is maybe slightly better for white because of this isolated pawn, and of course you must like the knight pair compared to the bishop pair or another thing. Then of course there are these two pawns that can be considered a little hanging. However, again, this is an endgame that if you try maybe to play against the computer, you will discover bitterly that maybe you will not win so easily. Now let's go back to the diagram and see what was played actually in the game. Okay, we were in this position. White played knight e4. The best move for the authors was rook a d1, which maintains the balance. Now let's see what happens. d5, knight e d2. Boom. Okay. So this doesn't make much sense, right? Because why do you play knight e4 for going back right away? This move, it seems, is not good. Why is not good? Because this time there is an actual discovery. Boom! Bishop f3, and then you lose the material, right? What do you do here? How do you solve the problem of this attack and this attack at the same time? So yeah, knight c3 doesn't seem good. What about knight g3? Also, knight g3 doesn't work well because there is bishop b4. So as you can see, probably white didn't really think much when he played this move, because he didn't think what he would do after this. If he would have thought of this only, obviously says, but then why do you do this, that you give a better, improved pawn structure to black? That is clearly the problem here, right? Okay, so knight e d2, and black plays bishop a3, which is an interesting discovery because it's attacking the queen and attacking this at the same time. Now white plays bishop e5, and as we can see, black doesn't give up any tempo and continue to attack relentlessly white with f6. So at this point probably that is lost, right? So what does white do? Queen a6 attacking the knight b7 and the bishop a3 at the same time. But let's see what they say in the book. In the book they say white's last two moves were the only way to avoid material loss, but positionally their consequences are very unpleasant for him. F takes e5 and queen takes a3. At this point, okay, there is a comment, so let's read the comment. For me it's kind of obvious. This is kind of out of the game. Black has gained a central pawns that will practically kick away all the enemy pieces while advancing, and this means that black will have a kind of space advantage. But let's see what it says here. The upshot of the exchange is that black has a powerful pawn center and an open f-file. Okay. Moreover, the white queen is misplaced, like I just said, is out of the game. Lasker now proceeds with unremitting energy to exploit these pluses. And why these pluses? Because this advantage that he has is a kind of temporary, is not something like when you win a rook and the rook is yours and so you have a +5 that it's forever, that way. These are kind of volatile advantages, temporary advantages that will not last if you don't do something to increase the advantage and then convert it into a material gain. Okay? So what do they say here? According to his formula quoted above, black should now bring his pieces into the attack on the king side, bringing up his reserves with as much gain of time as possible, whilst preventing white doing the same. Lasker does this by ensuring that every move contains a threat, thus giving white no time to consolidate his forces. Let's see what happens. So you could pause the video and see if you can find the same move that Lasker played, or just watch. e4, knight d4, queen f6. So as we can see, e4 attack this, queen f6 attack this, so every move is an attack. Okay, c3, and now what do you think he plays? Again, every move is an attack. Rook f8, and this is chapter 4 about attack, right? Rook f8 is attacking this. Okay, f3, queen g5, queen g5 attack this, But in reality, generally, there is the typical pattern that you want to do this to try to give checkmate, right? So I think maybe that's the real thing going on here. Queen c1, knight c5. So as Lasker said, he's trying to bring all the pieces on the king side to continue the attack. And let's see what he says here. Here they say, every one of Lasker's move contains a threat, leaving white no time to bring up extra defenders or create any counter threats. Knight f1, queen g6. Of course, now the point is that when he played, I just show you, queen f1, this attack this, right? So he's trying to ask for an exchange, but black doesn't want to exchange because he's attacking. At this point, the real threat is this, because he's going to fork them both, right? So that's the problem. White obviously plays rook e3 to try to avoid. Here the author says that they show you that also this is not so good, okay? If you buy the book, you will see it. Obviously, when I show you the book and the games, it's a review. I don't show you everything because obviously otherwise the authors will say, but I'm sorry, how do we get paid, right? So I try to show you most of the things that I see because those are personal views and maybe they're wrong, but at least you can see the content of the book if you are interested or not, because the good thing of chess is that we have so many books that it's impossible to decide what to read or not, right? So I'm trying to help the viewers of these videos to decide if they like the book or not, and if they want to spend their money or not in this book. The game continued with knight d3, queen d1, knight f4. As you can see, there is again the checkmate threat, but look, there are a lot of possible how to say, themes, tactical themes, right? So again, it's kind of very interesting, this game, very beautiful to see in action what happens. How does white defend after knight f4 with knight g3? Once more, black reiterates the attack, no? h5. Lasker is quite relentless. White has not had a moment's breathing space since his unfortunate 14th move. Knight d e2 was the continuation, and it says it is interesting to compare this position with that after white's 18th move, which was, I don't know which one was the 18th move, when the queen was here and he took the bishop f3. Let's see what he says. At that point, white already had a rook and two knights defending his king. Over the past 9 moves, the only reserve piece he has managed to add to the defense is the queen, and even she is quite passive. Meanwhile, over the same period, black has brought his knights all the way from b7 to f4. Yeah. Advance the pawn, oh, yeah. Brought the rook to an open file, a semi-open file, and this queen to g6, okay, and push the pawn to h5. Now, with almost all of black's pieces in the attack, the moment is ripe for a decisive sacrifice. Wow, a decisive sacrifice, very beautiful. So, we are in this position. What would you do if you were black, if you were Lasker? What would you play? What is the decisive sacrifice he's talking about? I hope you pause the video, you try to find it for yourself. If not, boom, knight takes g2, boom. King takes g2, e takes f3, check. rook takes f3, bishop h3, and here obviously the continuation was king takes h3, but the author also comment this king f2, which is a line that brings to a fourth mate. So try to find it out for yourself or by the book. So king takes h3, queen g4, check again, king g2, queen takes f3, king g1, h4, sorry, I made a mistake, h4, knight h1, and queen e3 check, and here it seems white gave up, understanding that the game was over. Now I will show you also the other games of these chapters, because like they say, the remaining games of this section show various other aspects of the principle of attack. You will note that none of the games features Lasker himself, but they are all by players whose approach to chess was based to a fair extent on Lasker's, especially as regard independence of thought and willingness to depart from standard ideas. So we just see game 11, now we see game 12, Lodewijk Prince against Robert Cross in Hastings 1931-1932. Lodewijk Prince started with e4, c6, this is a Caro-Kann, and b4, a move that honestly I don't remember at all. Here it says, the Dutch grandmaster Lodewijk Prince was a creative player who had his own ideas about how to build his game. But what could have been the idea behind a seemingly outrageous move? d5, the logical follow-up for a Caro-Kann player, but also to e5, attacking this, comes into consideration. But yeah, this is a typical continuation of a Caro-Kann, right? e5, bishop f5, because that's why we play the Caro-Kann, because we want the bishop out. This is not the French. d4, e6, and c3. Now it is clear that with 2b4, white was expecting this follow-up and intending to clamp down on black's counterplay with c6, e5. Yeah, so it's block bet. At least that was Prince's own explanation. Obviously there is a5. This does not seem to harm white, and a few moves later it has helped him to stabilize the center. And this is a space advantage. Maybe knight c7, sorry, knight e7 was preferable. Knight e7. So let's see what happened after a5, b5, queen b6, a4, and c5. Because of white pawn on b5, black is unable to put additional pressure on d4. Generally in the French we play knight c6, right? And so it remains to be seen if a plan initiated with a5 was the best. Knight f3, c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop c5, obviously the idea is attack here. Bishop e2, knight e7, castle, and bishop takes b1. It seems that it was better to play bishop g6. Let's see what happens. Rook takes b1 and knight g6. This is marked as dubious by the authors, I think, and let's see what they say. They say, now white gets the opportunity to cement his central space advantage. A neutral developing move like knight d7 still promises black a reasonable game, as white cannot follow up with f4 in view of knight f5. Maybe. Okay, knight to g6, let's see, f4 and castle. Here, if you think for a second, knight c6 is kind of interesting, right? But probably it doesn't work because obviously white cannot take because of this and cannot take here, but he will play bishop e3 probably, so maybe not so good. In any case, in the game black played castle, king h1 to take away from that diagonal, knight d7, knight b3, bishop e7 and rook f3. This move is played to prepare bishop e3, okay? And then of course the rook can be swung to a kingside attack. Queen c7, rook h3, and here there is a mistake by black that plays f6. So let's see what white is playing. So why f6 is not so good? Well, this is the problem of the French. If you don't have a light square bishop, this is kind of becoming very shaky, right? So that is a kind of problem. So let's see what happens. Bishop g4, attacking immediately. So we see once more the theme of the same in the same game, in the previous game, where once there is a weakness, boom, you start to attack it, right? f5, bishop e2, knight c5, knight takes c5, bishop takes c5, and then we have bishop d3 and b6. Here it says underestimating white's attacking chances. Now white has a marked superiority on the king side and is invited to attack there, so he should, and hurry. The next moves are logical in that contest. Queen h5, king f7, g4, and here it says, of course, the Dutch grandmaster doesn't fall for the cheap trick of queen takes here. Why? Because there is rook h8, and where do you escape? If you takes back, take, he has got rook and queen for two rooks. It's clearly a great advantage, right? So yeah, opening with g4, opening the lines, maybe as you can see all the lines are open, and then this must enter into the game, right? F takes g4, queen takes g4, and queen b7. Rook takes h7, d4 check, king g1, d takes c3, check, king f1, queen h1 check, and king e2. Now you must understand this sequence must have been calculated by white, because otherwise he could lose, right? He could lose the entire game. Knight takes e5 and f takes e5, and the game is over. Simplest here, black resign, and of course black ignores king side, and that's the result, as you can see. Now, for those that don't see, let me try to help you. Here they could have put a line, right? A little line to better understand what's going on. This is the weak point, right? Let's say that he defends it. What do you do as white? Well, you could give check. That's a possibility, right? You can go here, and of course you can continue with another check, or you can continue to attack. I don't know, whatever you like. So let's see again for a second. He defended, the queen was on probably g4. So what does it do? Maybe queen g6 not the right one. Maybe bishop g6 is better, because after this then the game is over. Okay, let's see. As you can see, in the attack one must be precise, must calculate very far, and of course let's see the next games in this chapter, so we have an idea of the attack in the mind of Lasker and following his ideas.